Hey everyone, the time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, and cabbages and kings, and why the sea's boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings. If you haven't guessed already, this time we're here to talk about Alice in Wonderland. No, not the animated 1951 Disney classic or the more recent 2010 live-action remake. It's the 1933 black and white live-action film featuring Charlotte Henry as Alice. Now, one night, while watching a snowstorm and petting her cat, Alice finds herself bored. In the process, she lets her imagination get away with her, as she imagines things about a white rabbit, chess pieces, and the looking glass above the fireplace mantel. She decides to try walking through the looking glass, and in the process she finds a different world on the other side. When she spies the white rabbit, she follows him, only to fall down a rabbit hole. But while in that other world, she runs into many different characters, from the caterpillar to the Cheshire Cat, to the Red and White Queens, to the Mad Hatter and the March Hare, and many others. Now, obviously, most will know of the 1951 Disney classic, but not too many know that Walt Disney had, with Mary Pickford, actually been trying to plan a live-action and animation hybrid in the early 1930s. However, Paramount Studios beat them to the punch and got the film rights first. And they actually even had an animated segment in their film for the Walrus and the Carpenter part. Now, many actresses were auditioned for the title role of Alice, with some sources claiming that Ida Lupino tested for it and was originally intended to get the role, but it ended up going to Charlotte Henry. Now, the whole movie ended up being a bit of an all-star film, as Paramount was hoping that it would help keep them from going bankrupt. However, the movie ended up being a flop. Now, like many, I can guarantee that the 1951 Disney animated film is probably the most familiar version of the Lewis Carroll story. Certainly is for me. Now, not having read the actual stories, I can't really say how accurate this movie is to the book. Now, looking at it, to a degree, I can understand why the movie originally flopped. Now, in spite of all the big stars in the cast, most are very hard to recognize underneath all those costumes. Speaking of those costumes, I would certainly say that some of them might border on being a little too scary for little children, so this is not necessarily a movie for the whole family. Now, as to the plot itself, the movie is very episodic in nature, without much of a thread to pull everything together for a cohesive story. Still, that's not a terrible thing, as some scenes here are quite a bit of fun. I know I got a chuckle out of Alice's conversation with the dodo, as played by Polly Moran, as the dodo talks about history to help dry out Alice's clothes. Maybe I should try that sometime with my own. But while the character essentially seems to be a puppet, Humpty Dumpty is still very recognizable as being voiced by the famous comedian W.C. Fields, and is one of the better scenes in the movie, even if it does feel just a little too short. Now, for me, Edward Everett Horton seems well cast and very easily recognizable as the Mad Hatter, and is joined by Charles Ruggles as the March Hare, although because of his costume, he's not as easily recognizable, for the tea party scene, which is a lot of fun. Now, I can easily go on about many of the scenes in this movie, and quite frankly, that's not even mentioning a familiar voice coming from the wrong character, since Sterling Holloway, who would later voice the Cheshire Cat in the Disney film, is the voice of the frog here, with Richard Arlen voicing the Cheshire Cat. Now, I do think, when it comes down to preference, I would go with the Disney classic for its music, slightly more coherent story, and its more family-friendly nature. But I'll still take this film because it's a lot of fun, and I still think it's worth recommending. Now, this movie is available on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber. Now, the movie looks pretty good in high definition. There are some scratches here and there, and I'd say the picture is far from perfect. But given the fact that the movie didn't even make its home video debut on DVD until 2010, yeah, I just don't think it would be popular enough to warrant a full restoration. So, for me, this release looks good enough to recommend it. The movie itself is 1 hour and 16 minutes in length. Well, that should be all I have to say on this one, everybody. So, thanks for listening, and I hope you'll keep tuning in for more.